Hey everybody, it is springtime and this is what I call the most wonderful time of year because it is the trout fishing season here in British Columbia, and right across this province there are roughly around 800 lakes that are stocked with rainbow trout, and these fish go into the lake as yearlings roughly around this big, and potentially they could grow up to 1 or 2 pounds, which are perfectly fine for eating, so you could take them home and they're really delicious, or you could encounter fish up to 6, 7, 8 pounds or even more. And so those are fish of a lifetime, so it's very exciting simply by going out to one of these lakes. All you need to do is get your freshwater fishing license, get the right equipment, and you're all set to go. In the last few years, you probably have seen me catching some of these fish in our episodes, and I've been getting a lot of requests from people asking me, so can you do an overview of your fly fishing setup in these fisheries? Because fly fishing is probably the best go-to method for the lake fisheries we have around here. These fish primarily feed on insects, so you probably would have a lot more success using flies instead of bait and lures. So here we go. So that's what we're doing today in this video, and you would not believe how simple, how basic the setups are, and all you got to do is go out and get the right equipment and you could enjoy some of these fisheries as well. So starting with the fly fishing rod, you want to get one that's ideal for trout. Now, fly fishing rods are rated from 0 weight, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the number gets higher. So the higher the number is, the heavier the rod is. This is a 6 weight rod. For trout, you can use anywhere from 3 weight, 4 weight, 5 weight, 6 weight. And my recommendation is that if you're just starting out, you should go with something a little heavier. So a 5 weight or a 6 weight is better. A 3 or 4 weight rod is good for, it's pretty fun when you catch a trout on it, but it can be pretty difficult to cast, especially on a windy day. Starting out with a 5 or 6 weight, you'll have a lot more, shall we say, more enjoyable time when it comes to the casting from the boat, especially on a really windy day, like I said earlier. So this is a 6 weight rod. It's 9 feet long, and which is pretty standard. You can get rods that are shorter, down to 8 feet long, 7 feet, 7.5 feet, or 10 feet, or even longer. But 9 feet long, it's usually the standard length for a fly fishing rod to go with, and that's what I recommend as well. You want to go with the fly fishing reel that's spooled with 6 weight line as well. So the numbers has to match. You can go slightly higher if you want. So you could potentially go up to a 7 weight fly fishing line, and that makes casting actually a little easier as well. But anyways, so matching the line to the rod, it's pretty important. So this is a 6 weight floating line. There's many different kinds of fly fishing line you can get. So there's floating line, there's sinking line, and between the two there is also many different types of floating line. Some are for fishing in saltwater, some are for fishing in lakes, in dry fly for in rivers. For sinking line, you have to have intermediate sink line, you can have fast sinking lines, but for today's purpose we're going to be using a floating line. Just like anything else with the rod, reel, and line, you can get your standard entry-level setups, which are cheaper, or you can go with something slightly more expensive. This island reel is pretty expensive. It's more of a high-end reel. Same thing with the G-Loomis rod. Together, it's quite a few $100s, but you don't need to invest that much on a fly fishing setup if you're just starting out. You can go out and spend a couple $100s for everything actually, and you're set to go. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put the reel on the rod and put the line through all the guides as well, and I'll come back and show you what's next. Okay, so I got my line going through all the guides on the fly fishing rod already, and now I'm holding the end of that fly line. At the end of the fly line, most of the lines that you get today will have a loop on it that you can tie your fishing line directly on to pretty easily. So what I do is I have a leader right here. So this is the line that you want to go onto your fly line next. And at the very tip of the leader, I got a loop knot already tied on. So all I gotta do is I'm gonna thread my fly line into this loop, and then I'm gonna thread the end of that leader through the loop of the fly line, and then the two are connected. So the type of fly fishing that is most commonly done at lakes around here is indicator fishing. So you're fishing from an anchor boat, you're fishing from the floating dock, fishing from the shore, you're casting the line out with an indicator on the leader. So this is a bobber. Okay, it's strike indicator or float. Okay, so this is your strike indicator, and it is what the name suggests. So when the fish bites, this thing is gonna sink, and that's when you know you have a fish on. It's very, very exciting. This thing here also keeps your fly suspended at the right depth. So for example, if you're fishing in 10 feet of water, you from the indicator down to your fly, you want to be roughly around 8 to 9 feet. So your fly is suspended about a foot to 2 feet off the bottom. That's usually where the fish are feeding on. So so this thing is pretty important. So it kind of makes fly fishing a lot easier when it comes to line control, because that's controlling your line. By having this on, you're suspending the fly at the right depth, and that way you can get a lot more bites. So here you go. So on my leader, what I have right now, I have roughly around 12 feet. I actually went out last week and fished one spot that's roughly around 12 to 14 feet deep. So, I don't need leader that's longer than that. 12 feet is more than enough. Sometimes we fish in 20 feet of water, so you want to have 20 feet of leader. But early in the season, fish tend to be in the shallower water. You can fish even down to 5 feet. You want to adjust the length of your leader based on where you're fishing and when you're fishing. So early in the season, you're fishing a lot shallower, whereas as the season progresses, water temperature increases, fish are starting to move a little deeper into the deeper, colder part of the lake. That's when you start fishing deeper. So that's when you start having 20 feet of line, 20-ish feet of leader. Next step is threading that indicator onto your line. So the indicator comes in two parts. So this is a quick release indicator. It comes with the orange part, which is your strike indicator, and it's also got a black peg as well. So I'm threading the orange part onto the line first, like so, and then we're gonna put the black peg onto the line next. And the way this works is you fold the line once, and then you peg the black peg into the orange strike indicator like that. So the line's folded inside between the two, and when you get a bite, when the fish pulls, and when you're pulling, what's going to happen is, and you pull once, and this two come apart, and it will slide down like that. The reason we're using that is to prevent the indicator stuck on your leader. So let's say if you're fishing in 20 feet of water and you got your float depth, your indicator depth set it at 19 feet, your fly fishing rod is only 9 feet long. And if you have an indicator that's stuck at 19 feet above the fly, you're gonna have a lot of problem fighting that fish. So the line that I use for my leader, and I've been using this for several years now, it's worked really well for me. It's just Seaguar fluorocarbon 12-pound test. I don't go any heavier than that. I don't tie tapered leader, so I don't tie sections of leader going from heavy to light. Just straight, 12 pounds straight. If you're fishing 20 feet, have 20 feet of this just tying onto your fly fishing line, to have 20 feet of it. And at the end of that leader, what I'm going to do is we're going to tie a swivel, and then we're going to tie your tippet onto it as well. So we're going to tie the swivel onto it. And this swivel has couple purposes. It's used to connect your leader to the tippet, but it's also acting as a tiny little weight that helps to sink the fly down a little faster. So simple, improved clinch knot. Tie it on like that. I'm gonna trim that down. And I actually have a tippet tied on the other end already. So tippet is simply a small section of line that goes down to the fly. This line is usually a little thinner than your main leader because you want to use something a little more, something that matches the size of the fish that you're catching. In this case, we're using 6-pound Seaguar right here. And we tie roughly around 2 feet of it from the swivel, and then you have your fly at the very end. For flies, you want to get a variety of chironomids, and that's what these fish are feeding on. If you don't tie flies, that's okay. You can totally buy flies. These particular flies are tied by Justin Sanders, and they're pretty awesome. I've been using them for a couple years now. I'll leave the link in the description if you're interested to get some. So the most commonly used chironomids are size 14, size 16. We got silver body, what we call gunmetal body, brown, different colors, olive, and with different colors of ribs on them. So you got red and black or brown, and then you also have the head, which is the bead, which can be black or white. So it's different variety, and it's good to get a good variety because you never know what it's going to be hatching at the lake. So these chironomids emerge from the bottom of the lake during springtime between 9 o'clock in the morning and 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Those are usually the best fishing hours. As the sunlight hits the lake, they start coming out from the bottom and swimming towards the surface, and that's when the fish start getting crazy. They start biting left and right, and you want to be in this area. Cast your fly out, let it dangle, let it suspend 1 or 2 feet off the bottom, and most likely you will encounter a fish or two if you're fishing that way. Surely you can go get out and throw your fly around. You see people do that many times, and you will get into fish randomly just simply by tricking the fish to bite aggressively out of aggression. But if you can find areas where the hatches are happening and kind of position yourself in the area and cast your fly out, let it suspend 1 or 2 feet off the bottom, and you will catch a lot more fish this way than trolling. One other thing I want to mention is that I do have a little flow stopper tied onto my leader. This isn't to stop my indicator or anything, but is to mark my depth. So once I set my depth, let's say my indicator right here, that's the depth I want to fish at. If I hook a fish and this indicator comes off, it's gonna slide down, you're gonna lose track where you just set that indicator previously. So your flow stopper is there. You can place it pretty close to where you're setting your indicator on the liners, and once you hook a fish, your indicator is sliding around. You can go look at your flow stopper again, saying, "Hey, so that's roughly where I need to set it again." Instead of measuring again, guessing, that's just too much time wasted when the fish are biting. The other thing you can do is if you're fishing in deeper water, let's say 20 plus feet, and this swivel it's not very heavy, and you can add additional split shots onto that leader as well, just to make your fly sink down to the depth you want it to be faster, and that kind of cut down your waiting time, and hopefully you can get more bites that way. Well, there you have it. This is a very generic overview of my fly fishing setup for lakes. You can go into pretty detailed information, pretty technical stuff on this, but I just want to get this out there so you can go out and get your basic fly fishing rod and reel set up, get your your floating line, pick up your leaders and tippet, a box of flies, and make sure you get some indicators, and you can get out there, set this up, and catch some nice trout as well. And if you have any other questions regarding this setup or fly fishing, lake fishing, or trout fishing, please make sure you leave a comment on the bottom. I'm always happy to answer them. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to the channel. I really appreciate it. And until next time, good luck fishing.